Hi, thanks for watching this recording, which is an interview with Irisanya Moon, who wrote one of the essays in our beautiful collaborative Magic of the Pearl Pentacle book that's out now. And Irisanya, thanks for coming on the call.
Thank you so much, Jane. A little bit about myself for folks who might not know. Irisanya Moon, that is the correct way to pronounce that. I am currently living on the land of the Wapo, Southern Pomo, and Coast Miwok people, which is Santa Rosa, California, United States, such as they are. I am an author, witch, priestess, international teacher, poet, and initiate in the reclaiming tradition. And I think I can say I've been working with reclaiming for 20 years, but I just didn't move to California till about 20 years ago. Yeah.
Great. And Irisanya, when we suggested to you that you might be willing to, or even desire to, write a piece for this book on the Pearl Pentacle, I'd love to know, or maybe if you remember what your reaction was, but also what the Pearl Pentacle means to you.
Yeah, I do remember actually, because it was proposed as we'd like you to write about knowledge. And I am a Sagittarius sun, Gemini moon, Gemini rising. So this was completely up my alley. Yes, please. I want to talk about knowledge. No idea where to start. There's a whole bunch of things that came into my mind and that we eventually distilled down into this piece. In terms of Pearl Pentacle, I remember taking Pearl Pentacle for the first time with Copper Persephone and Diana Melissa B. And I remember not really getting it. I didn't understand. I had taken all of the core classes that year, and that was the final one that I was taking. And I don't know if I was tired or I just couldn't understand. I just didn't get it. And it was actually really hard. Iron felt easy. I mean, I like looking at like the crevices and the things that I should improve on. But Pearl asked something different. It asked for me to sort of take who I am and step into community and relate to folks. And at that point, wasn't really ready for that. The second time I took Pearl, okay, then I think I got it. I mean, you never quite get it because it's ongoing work.
Yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. I mean, all of Reclaiming's core classes surely are that. They're living entities that we engage with,
Yes.
really, rather than an assignment that we tick off as completed, well, in my view. And so,
Great.
in the Pearl Pentacle, the way it's positioned in this book is that knowledge is the fifth and final point of the Pentacle. So, tell me, as we're talking about knowledge within the context of the Pearl Pentacle, what particular resonance does that have for you personally, as well as then having to write an essay, which we'll go into in a minute? But what's your personal take on this knowledge in the Pearl Pentacle?
Well, as a writer and person who has way too many bookmarks in their browser of things that I would like to go back to and read and learn about, knowledge for me is excitement. It is getting to uncover something new. It is being able to be exposed to something I've never seen before or never thought of before. And I also think of, the ravens collecting all the shiny things. That's the image I often get in my head for knowledge. So for me, this is an exciting point. This is a point that is also a point of when do you sort of stop and sort of sit with all that knowledge. I think that's where my personal work is to as a writer, I'm often collecting all of these books and all of these things and trying to figure out what goes in the book. When is it enough, and when do I settle and say that's enough for now? Not really sure yet.
Yeah, I think there's something in what you're saying for me about distillation. Like, yes, we're surrounded by all this knowledge. Before we started the recording, you and I were talking about how many books we owned individually or collectively. And to me, there's a point within the Pearl Pentacle where that particular knowledge is about distillation, is about like the essence of what we truly know, not just all the knowledge in the world or everything we could know, but what it is that what you mentioned, what it is that we're bringing in. And your essay in here, which is called Distilling the Knowledge of a Tradition, is about this document that we hold in Reclaiming the Principles of Unity. This document, you can search it online. It's on the web. If you want to read it, it's also in the book, written out in full at the beginning. But Irisanya, with this essay, you took various segments or sentences out of the Principles of Unity, this document that we've consensed on, and you wrote explanations or unpackings about that. I mean, what was it like to do that? What do you feel like you learned or gained by doing that?
I think it's so very valuable, at least to me, to go back to things that I think I know really well. Because I talk about it when I teach elements of magic, or when I've taught, various other things, or when I've written other books. I've talked about the principles of unity a whole bunch of times. But to sort of sit there and go, well, I can't pick all of these pieces of the entire writing because it won't fit in the book. But what are the ones that stand out the most to me? And I was really excited to get to write about certain pieces that are really the ones that have inspired me as a witch, as a person, and then other parts that have really helped remind me of why I love reclaiming so much and why I am an initiate in this tradition and why I keep coming back for more.
Mm. And that process that you went through to write this essay, I mean, I'm imagining that's something that every reclaiming person or a person inquiring into reclaiming could, really usefully do. Like, not just like what is technically meant by this sentence or this paragraph in the Principles of Unity, but what does it mean to me? And how do I show up to that? Or what are the challenges that I meet within that? Or what are the inspirations, as you spoke about? And for me, that's really like the invitation of what you mentioned before we got in this call, that reclaiming calls itself an evolving tradition. Would you like to speak more to that?
Yes, there's so many things to speak to in terms of evolution. I, yeah, that's the tagline. Reclaiming is an evolving tradition because I wrote a book once on reclaiming, and the day after, or like a few months after I turned it in to be, set for all the stuff that it does after that, I don't know, the Principles of Unity changed. And so my book was out of date, and I had literally just written it. The thing for me is that uh, when you're an evolving tradition, it is a place that can be shifted to respond to what's going on in your community. It can be something that can listen and can adjust and can expand to make sure folks feel like they belong, that they're seen, and in some cases that we're preventing harm, and harm that's sometimes already occurred. So that is something that really sits well in my heart and offers to me the opportunity to also remember that I am part of that community. So if there was something that was up for me, the Principles of Unity and or community or whatever could also hold that, or at least make space for that to be heard and seen.
Yeah, I think that's something I really like about knowledge in the Pearl Pentacle is it's not just knowledge that we already have, right? It's not like, oh, knowledge done and dusted. It's like this, what are we learning? Where are we opening to? What are our edges in this? What new things are being brought to us as different people enter the tradition or find their voice, or different social movements or political justice movements are happening around us, never mind within the tradition. Like, what is this knowledge that is, actively happening, and where does that take us? So I love that point that you're speaking to there. And I also, another thing that I love about knowledge in the Pearl Pentacle, when it's run this particular way, is that is the turning point back to love, back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so there's some process in this distillation of knowledge, or this acting with and upon and for knowledge, that is somehow the pathway back to love, or that opens us back to the next level, if you like, of the pentacle.
Well, with knowledge is curiosity, I think, or at least it should be there. And curiosity opens things up. It opens you to connect in different ways. It opens you to connect to different things. It allows you also to have these interactions and these conversations from places of genuine interest versus sort of trying to get to a certain goal. Curiosity for me and knowledge is actually one of the first things that helps me fall in love. It's like curious, you get curious about a person, or you get curious about how they see you and all of that. And I think that movement, at least in this version of the Pearl Pentacle, makes a lot of sense for that, and also makes me all soft and gooey.
Yeah. Thanks for writing this piece, which in a way is a really nitty-gritty piece in the book. And we often joke about pearls and pearl pentacles, that it's the piece of grit, right? That starts the whole process of creating a pearl. And I think knowledge is one of those gritty points. Maybe law is another one where we really have to get down to, like, what are we meaning here? What are the implications of this? Where do we stand on this? And what do we stand for? Who do we stand with? Like, all of those questions. And I think that the way that you've laid it out in this book really invites other people to also, pick up their pens and start journaling, or start doing a little blog around either the principles of unity or the things that they're taking for granted as their knowledge, whether it's individually or in a community. Right. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about, like the process of writing that, or anything that you, anything you?
Well, I think one thing that I think the knowledge point can and should bring up more maybe is this idea that all of our different kinds of knowledge can work together. I think that, especially in the overculture of this particular moment where things are strange, and I don't want to unpack all of that. But I think that one of the things that's really been a growth edge for me in the last lifetime is this idea that different pieces of knowledge can still inform each other, even if I don't necessarily see it in the same way. And I think that is, again, calling back to the curiosity and calling back to this idea that, okay, I don't understand this. How could I? Or how could I at least understand where you're coming from? And that is what builds strong community. That continuous, at least for me, this continuously coming back to, how do we communicate this? How do we stay open to the fact that I'm like this today, I might not be like this tomorrow. So how do we do that based on our life experiences, et cetera? For me, writing this piece was it had a couple versions to it, and this is the second idea that was there. I had a previous version, which I could share with folks if folks wanted to see it at some point, but this version really was one that brought me, I don't know, the principles of unity is really sacred to me, and it is something I talk about with a lot of enthusiasm, apparently, because folks like it when I talk about it. And I also got to talk to a whole bunch of people. I got to talk to folks who were there during all of these different steps of how it was created, how it was formed, how it was initiated. And that, to me, brought me even closer to this tradition and brought me a lot of insight that I didn't have. I also learned some stories about the POU, apparently, when I was first growing up in reclaiming, that were not true. And so this was really great to correct that. And so I got to walk through my own dedication to curiosity and be willing to be, like, informed differently of my information.
Great. Updated, you could say.
I have updated, yes.
The latest version is downloaded. So yeah, I really liked what you were talking about just a little bit before, which was to me coming across as, like, there are things that we know together that we hold in common, like within reclaiming. We could say, oh, we know we've got the principles of unity. We basically know what they are. And we know that we're on board with that. But then also as a community, and the Pearl Pentacle is very oriented towards community work, we not just accept, but maybe revel in the fact that we're each bringing different knowledges into this work. And it's not so much that we have to all agree on this is the one knowledge that we're all holding, but that we can have this kind of multiplicity of knowledges that meet and overlap and offer differences and complexity. So I really like that. I really like that complexity as at that point, within the distillation of the complexity, perhaps the pentacle turns and opens back up to love.
Absolutely. And Yeah, and to think of the pearl that's, if it's the irritation of the grit and slowly we're knackering over that to make a pearl, knowledge is one way I think of sort of bringing together something and to form something of beauty and to form something of substance. And again, moving back to love.
Thanks so much for your time, Irisanya. I hope everyone gets
Absolutely.
to read your essay and learn more about the principles of unity and maybe be inspired to unpack them or investigate them further for themselves. And when they're running the Pearl Pentacle, maybe some of our thoughts about knowledge will be an inspiration for some of your experiences.
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.